So my number one is Sister Act from 1992, directed by Emil Ardolino. I hope I'm saying that right. Starring Whoopi Goldberg, Maggie Smith, Harvey Keitel, and a great cast of nuns, if you will. Quick logline: when a nightclub singer is forced to take refuge from the mob in a convent, she ends up turning the convent choir into a soulful chorus, complete with a Motown repertoire until the sudden celebrity of the choir jeopardizes her identity. That's a pretty good logline.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a classic. I mean, it sounds like the way School of Rock was for you. This has been in my rotation canon since kind of the beginning of times. I can't remember a time where I've not been aware of this movie for some reason. And I think it's sort of similar to what we were just talking about for School of Rock. It's music. It's an odd duck who's maybe selfish and kind of stuck in their life, enters this very opposite kind of environment from their own predicament and their own situation, and this clash. And then through that clash, they discover common ground. And in this case, the common ground once again is music. And that bonds this whole group of odd ducks together. There's some hijinks, and then there's a great performance at the end that wins hearts and things. But it's peppered with Whoopi Goldberg, who I think is amazing. And we've covered a few Whoopi movies in the past that I've brought, like The Associate. I think this is probably in her pantheon of movies in my mind. Like whenever I think of Whoopi, I always think of Sister Act. Nobody does feeling irritated and uncomfortable better than Whoopi. This is the faces she makes and the quick jab she has, and it just makes me so happy always. But you get to see like a kinder, tough love side to her in this movie. And the real joy of the movie is just seeing all these different nuns who've all had their own stories and lives and such come together, find that passion, just the way we were talking about in some of our previous picks, and come together, find more meaning in life and band together. And even the quote unquote bad guy, Maggie Smith, in this movie, you get her side as well. Like these movies, once again, like School of Rock, this movie can be kind of superficial, where you don't really buy the conflict because the characters are not grounded enough or they're too one-dimensional. That's not the case here. Maybe the writing may not be as elevated as, say, a Richard Linklater movie is, but the performances do the work, I think, to kind of really ground everybody and make them three-dimensional people. And then the last thing I would say before I throw it to you, and then we can dive in more, is that this movie is shot in San Francisco, and this church where the movie takes place is like a few blocks away from where I live. So I'm very familiar with just the church. I mean, the outside setup of the church, what the streets they showed, that looks like a different place, or who knows, maybe this is how it was back then.
It's probably a backlot, potentially. Like the scenes when it was all like the rough neighborhood, like that looked like a backlot to me.
Probably, yeah. Although, San Francisco is going through some interesting changes, so who knows?
That's true, yeah.
But so yeah, it's this movie now. It's so weird to me after watching this movie growing up, and to be now living so close to where this church is kind of a fun little gag. Like I go for my walk or my run and get coffee, and I see this church, and I always, think about this movie and its songs. You watched this movie before?
Yeah, I saw this as a kid, and I loved it as a kid. And it's funny actually watching this and then School of Rock. I rewatched them both in the same week, and they are essentially the same movie. I feel like it's the same. There's a liar revealed storyline. It's the crazy, sort of a wild card thrown into a situation, and then through the wildness, and then through music, and there's a big performance at the end. This person teaches everyone else to loosen up a little bit, because loosening up is good. And they both work so well at that, I think. And both of them are starring a very, specific comedic actor and how they like to perform. And I think this, for me, is a signature Whoopi role. I think this really put her on the map as a big star in the 90s for like family comedies. It was really due to her performance in this, which she does such a good job in this film. And this film, not only just with her, but as a lot of the side characters, much like in School of Rock 2, where the kids, It's like
Yeah.
Catherine and Jamie is just infectious as that
Amazing.
nun, and then the other sort of more closed off, kind of quiet nun who then she gets the
Yeah.
big solo, and you just love watching all these
And the
characters
older
kind of
nuns
change. Oh,
too,
the
they're
older nuns are
so
so cute.
cute.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's something joyous in watching
Yeah.
people kind of like loosen up, discover their passions. Sort of more quieter, reserved nun I mentioned, she's like, oh, I just always wanted to just give something to the world that was just
Right.
mine, like to be able to give my joy and my energy out to the world. And there is a joy in that.
Yeah.
But then also joy in seeing somebody do that, like open up and then find their passion. And you see her at the end, and she's just amazing, and everyone's loving. Her voice is so great, and she's able to come out of her shell through music. And there's a joy in finding yourself through that. And I think this movie does such a great job with that. I mean, the actual plot is a lot more cheesy and sort of convenient than like School of Rock's. Oh, he's a substitute teacher. Here is like there's like a mob hit gone wrong, and
Right.
she's got to. But
But I
that's
kind of
silly. Hey,
love
it's silly.
that.
I love that too. That's why it's a
Yeah.
silliness to it that makes it fun. Like it's totally unrealistic, but who cares? Like just get
Yeah.
Whoopi in a habit in a nunnery. Like that's the plot's like, how do we do that in a way just to get her in there? Because at that point, this movie's going to be great. And I sort of think there's a fun that, yeah, there's a cheesiness to that works for me. As always smiles when I see like that part of it, like the Harvey Keitel mob boss stuff. I'm like, oh, this is just so silly, but hey, it's fun. It's
It sort
sister
of
act.
works on me. And then all
Yeah.
the gags of like, oh, this she's a nun, even though she's not a nun, so we can't really kill her or do things to
I
her.
loved that
I
part.
love
Yeah.
all of those bits. And then how like all the nuns like guilt trip the guys to kind of, rent the jet so they can get to Vegas. Like all of
Yes.
those
Yes.
things are amazing. Also, the other fun part about this movie is that kind of like with some of the other movies that we talked about, like don't read, the book based on its cover. Like
Mm-hmm.
we don't spend that much time in our lives, unfortunately, thinking about who these people are, meaning nuns, like what their lives are,
Yes.
what their routine looks like, how are they with each other, how do they view the world. And uh, again, it's a movie, it's not a documentary, but I love sort of showing in a very casual way like who these people are, what their day-to-day looks like. I kind of love that. I mean, they could have done this in any setup, but it's specific, like choosing this setup to kind of shed light on people that we don't often think about. So there's an instant kind of curiosity from the audience standpoint
Mm-hmm.
that you want to learn and you want to see what happens. Like when these nuns follow Whoopi earlier in the movie at this bar,
Oh
and
yeah.
they're playing with the jukebox and such, and you're like, oh, actually, these people had lives before they came here. They of
Right.
course have tastes and love music and like to dance and do things. Like they're just not people, with none of those human aspects. So I love that the movie brings all that to the forefront.
No, me too. And it's interesting as well in a movie where could have been mocking of the role of a nun, religion
Yeah.
in general. Like it very easily could have made fun of all that, but there is yes, it's a comedy, but
Yeah.
it doesn't ever poke fun at the nuns for being nuns. It's more just a classic, like, oh, you guys are too uptight. It's not doing anything specific. And in this rewatch too, is interesting just seeing how the religion is in the church. Let's say like the Catholic Church in the beginning of the movie was something that was Whoopi was like didn't like it, and it was like oil and water, and
Yeah.
and they show her growing up and not enjoying the Catholic school and always being the rebel and pushing back, and then even she has a relationship with Harvey Keitel, the mobster, who is married, I believe, or has a other
Yeah.
girlfriend. She's like the other
As a man.
woman, and he's gonna run off with her, but then realizes, oh, the church says I shouldn't do this. This is a sin. So the church is actually ending her like romantic relationship. Like the church in a way is doing all these things to antagonize it, like the antagonist in the film thematically. And then
Mm-hmm.
once she goes in there, all of a sudden now the church actually, like you were pointing out earlier, saves her life in the sense of these
Yeah.
these hitmen are about to kill her, and they're like, wait a second, you're a nun, like we're not going to do it. So when she now lets that into her life and realizes this is not a thing necessarily that I should be pushing against, like the church kind of saves her literally, but then also thematically throughout this film. And I thought that was just an interesting way to weave the religion themes into this movie without making this be like, oh, this is, like Nuns on the Run, which is a famous 80s comedy where
Right.
it's not about the religion. It's more of the sight gags and, oh, these are guys that are pretending to be nuns. Like, I just like how this movie, there's a sweetness to that too. And showing, yeah, there is a joy in what these nuns do. We're not belittling that. It's just, they need to loosen up a little bit and maybe, sing some more recent songs.
Yeah, and then on Whoopi's part, her arc is that of kindness and responsibility and open-mindedness. Like, where is her life going before, right?
Nowhere.
And
Yeah.
Maggie Smith points that out. Like, last time I checked, like, your music career is in the dumps.
Right.
The guy that you're in love with, you're the other one in his life, and he's going to dump you, and now he's after your life. Like, that's where
Right.
you're at. Let's just be very clear of where you're at, and by the end of it, she finds purpose and takes accountability of her own actions. And she's never really used her gift of music in a big way either. And that I love that. Like, same with Jack Black. These are rebels characters for rebels' sake. Like, what is that giving them? It's more of a cover of to their laziness or the poor choices that they made,
Mm-hmm.
and being non-conformist for like the heck of it. Like, what is the plan here? There is no plan for
Right.
any of these people.
Right.
So it's kind of fun to kind of break that, to then say, okay, you do have this rebel spirit. Let's figure out how we can channel that in a way that's constructive to you and the society, and then formulate the plan. And that could mean you conforming in certain ways. And that to me is life, right? Like, if you're just going to be a rebel, sure, you can do that and maybe some good comes out of it, but usually it has to be channeled in a meaningful way. You can't just be a rebel with no plan, no agenda whatsoever. So
Yeah. I mean, not to throw James Dean under the bus, or maybe I shouldn't use a car crash reference talking to him, but rebel without a cause, like, you're just,
yeah
what are you? You're useless. Like, I have no, sympathy for characters that just have rebels without, you need a cause. And I
yeah
think both Jack Black's character in School of Rock and Whoopi Goldberg's character in Sister Act start out with rebels without causes, but then
right
once they find a cause for their rebellion, there is joy in that. Like I was saying
right
in the School of Rock episode, in sharing that rebellious spirit with people that need a little bit of shaking up. And
right
I think you're totally right. Both these characters too grow through, they use their rebellion for good instead of just anarchy, for lack of a better,
exactly
or use an excuse to cover up the fact that their lives are pretty sad. Like Jack
right
Black, who doesn't have a career, is late on his rent. Whoopi Goldberg is singing in these, much better singer than she deserves to be in, like a lounge act in like a casino in Reno.
right
Like you could be doing much bigger things, and you think
yeah
maybe she could have, but this movie gives her that gift of, her purpose now is inspiring others to loosen up a little bit and have a little more fun, and spread the joy to the neighbor. I love that 80s montage, even though it's a 90s movie, but the little 80s
right
montage of them cleaning up the town, and all the nuns now
love
actually,
that
I love too in the fact that she is inspiring them to leave the church and the covenant, to go
right
out into the neighborhood and spread their joy and help other people, instead of just sort of stay locked up. And there's sort of a they're literally coming out of their shell, the shell of the physical church, and Whoopi is inspiring them to do that. I think that I love that sequence when they're all out there and there's this
yeah
song. It's very 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 joyous, and it makes me
very
smile every
joyous
time I see
yeah
it. Yeah.
yeah, they're both kind of pushing each other. And then of course the musical performances,
Amazing.
how the choir is so bad, how they come together,
Yeah.
and the dancing that goes, every none, the old ones too, they all get their own little bits to shine. And
Mm-hmm.
I just love just so much of joy and kind of tenderness to all of that.
It's just funny. It struck me, especially even in talking about it on this episode, not only just watching the two movies back to back, is our number ones are basically the same
The
movie
same movie.
and the same themes and the same everything, and they're both awesome. And I
Yeah,
love both of these movies so much.
yeah,
And Sister Act, I was watching it way before School of Rock because it came out 10 years earlier, and it just music, and just maybe how music too brings joy
right.
to our either both of our lives.
Yeah, totally agree.
But we're not singing though. We're not going to sing on this episode. That maybe
No?
maybe at a future episode we should do one about our love of song, and we can do a duet at the end.
Oh, you're tearing me apart since you mentioned it without a cause. I had to.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.